ZFM Stereo Talk.
Honorable Nduna, it is always a pleasure having you on ZFM. Have we seen a corresponding reduction in carnage, in road accidents, since there seems to have been this escalation in the police presence on the roads?
At 5 deaths per day in Zimbabwe, we are far away from the global average of 3 deaths per day. So I would imagine with the type of infrastructure that we've got, we're just making it worse for the motoring public.
The talk that gets you talking. Mondays to Thursdays between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. News, lifestyle, charts, live radio, station highlights, and much more. Get it all on zfmstereo.co.zw.
The platform. Step up and speak out.
It is a good evening, Zimbabwe. It's ZFM Stereo, my station, your station, the hottest radio in town. My name is Kwirirayi, and this is a special edition of the platform. But just to remind you of the frequencies you can listen to us across the country: Chivu 99.8, Kamativi Wange 105.1, Bytebridge 106.1, Mutorashanga 97.6, Nyanga 98.2. Gweru 104.3, Leslikadoma 105.2, Muntare 95.4, Bulawayo, my hometown 106.7, and we're broadcasting out of Harare, where our frequency is 106.4. Over the internet is www.zfmstereo.co.zw, and follow the conversation live on Twitter at ZFM Stereo. On Facebook, it's facebook.com/ZFM Stereo. And today is a special edition of the platform. As I said, we apologize due to circumstances beyond our control, we are unable to give you Ask the MP today, as we normally do on Tuesdays. Tonight, we have a special Economic Zones Board chairperson discussion with Dr. Gideon Gono. Essentially, it is something that he presented today. Now, just to give you a background of the special economic zones that we're talking about, is, as you're aware, the special economic zone refers to a geographical site with preferential laws, policies and regulations that are more liberal than those existing in the rest of the economy. These special economic zones operate through different forms, such as free trade zones, export processing zones, as well as free zones, industrial estates, as well as urban enterprise zones, among others. The main motivation for designating special economic zones is to attract greater foreign direct investment inflows, create jobs, and increase exports from the host country. They were first in China under Deng Xiaoping in the early 1990s as part of the country's Open the Door, Change the System policy. To date, the government has identified 3 SEZs, as they called, pilot projects, which are in Bulawayo, Sunway City in Harare, and Victoria Falls. In Bulawayo, the target is to create an industrial economic zone covering the beef and leather industry, cotton and textile, steel and foundry, as well as the rehabilitation of the national railways of Zimbabwe. In addition, a tourism hub is targeted for the corridor stretching from Victoria Falls, Kwai, Binga, Kariba, while Victoria Falls is targeted as a financial hub and Sunway City as a technology hub. Now, we're going to hear from Dr. Gideon Gono for the next 26 minutes, but I want you to be part of the conversation. And what I'd like you to do is, as you listen to his to the presentation he's talking about, we're going to deliver it in 2 parts. I'm going to read messages from you. As you pick up from what he says, tell me what you think on the WhatsApp number, which is 0731 168 Get in touch with me here in the studio on ZFM Stereo. Tell me what you think, and as far as the presentation that is and the things that he's got to say, this is the first part that's going to be over the next 26 minutes, and the second part will come thereafter. But I will be reading your feedback during the first break as well as the second break. It's ZFM Stereo, my station, your station, the hottest radio in town. Now let's listen to Dr. Gideon Gono.
Yes, indeed, there was excitement, and that excitement was and is not misplaced. That excitement still prevails, And we are at this stage dealing with the formative issues of the special economic zones. Unlike other institutions which have already been established, the Zimbabwe Special Economic Zones Authority is a new, brand new institution which, with your wisdom, you decided that it be created. And few people have had the privilege of actually starting new institutions in this country or in their lifetimes. And so my board is seized at this stage with those activities that go with the starting up of a new institution. The thing that we are seized with at the moment, which could also be drawing us back a little bit, is the absence of a secretariat. In your wisdom, you saw it fit in section 22 of the Act to say that upon appointment of the board, one of the first tasks that we needed to do was to recruit a chief executive. My board got seized with this matter, and we were appointed end of June, and by end of September we had carried out interviews, we had advertised, carried out interviews and made selections. And in terms of the cited section of the Act, a recommendation needed to be made to government for the confirmation of the board's choice. That confirmation of our selection of our selected candidate is still pending, and we have put this to the various checks that government could be undertaking in respect of the 3 names that we submitted. Now, the role of the chief executive, as you are aware, is to then drive the day-to-day activities of an organization, and the special economic zones is no different. My board is not executive. They are full-time members in their own right. Others employed by government, others employed elsewhere. Only the chairman is retired, tired, and expired. And so, to some extent, the board members do rely on me to carry out quasi-administrative functions. But that is not ideal. So, we are at this stage in the process of just waiting for the decision, which decision, once it comes, we will then confirm the CEO, who then will set up a secretariat. A secretariat that's then going to deal with the day-to-day operations of the authority. When we were set up also, it would appear that there were some oversights to the effect that there should have been resources allocated to an institution if it was deemed necessary to be set up. We found ourselves driving a car on empty, so to speak. No resources until end of December, when we were then allocated a 10th of what we had asked it for in terms of operational and capital budget. So as you know, without resources, there is very little you can do. Without a secretariat, there is very little you can do. However, we are not here to complain. We worked as a board to set up the various board committees, the audit committee, the legal committee, and variously the HR committees, as well as their terms of reference. And those are in place. And we also made it a point to visit each and every ministry and have dialogue with the honorable ministers of those ministries and permanent secretaries with a view to enlightening one another in terms of the cross-cutting nature of our functions as given to us by yourselves, the honorable members of parliament. So we did spend quite a lot of time doing that. And when the new administration took over, we had to start again, and we are in the process of making those courtesy calls to various ministers and ministries, so that when we say we are ready to go, there is no mismatch in terms of expectations, because very few people realize the cross-cutting nature of the Special Economic Zones Authority. It cuts across all the ministries and all institutions, whether it's local government or others. So unless you educate those stakeholders, you are likely to face a challenge. So yes, coming to the issue that you mentioned, you draw me into an area which is very difficult to tackle. That the SEZs were expected to deal with the cash crisis, liquidity challenges, and so forth. Indeed, I can confirm that upon operation, the special economic zones have capacity to contribute to the solutions of liquidity that are bedeviling this economy. Why do I say so? I say so against a background where the issue of liquidity, for instance, or cash crisis, as you may refer to it, I don't think the nation of Zimbabwe actually appreciates fully the ingredients that go into the liquidity or cash crisis. And if you give me 2 minutes, I can run through those and indicate where the special economic zones come in to ameliorate or avert or help to solve the cash crisis. Thank you. Now, liquidity to an economy is what blood is to the body of a human being. If there is insufficient blood in our bodies, we suffer from anemia, and the vital functions of the body stop functioning. By the very same token, an economy is driven by a certain minimum level of liquidity that is required. You can do all the budgeting, you can do all the plans, but if the car does not have sufficient fuel to take you to Mutare, or has got fuel only to take you to Marondera, you will not be able to do it. Liquidity also, Honorable Chairman, is the most fatal of all risks, in the sense that you can have billions and billions of money, of wealth rather, to your name. But if you do not have liquidity, you can actually collapse. If Bill Gates was to come to our airport and does not have $5, and my brother here has got $5, but he has nothing else to his name, and there is a thunderstorm that's about to come, and there is only one taxi, the taxi driver will take him and leave Bill Gates to suffer. That's what this country is at this stage. At this stage. Now, why do I say so? Because liquidity or cash, like I said, is the blood that gets us to function. There are basically 8 sources of liquidity. So people tend to just blame the banks, blame Vamangunjka, the governor, and so forth, without understanding the holistic nature of liquidity. And this is where I will point out where the special economic zones comes in. Number one, in any economy the world over, more so in a dollarized economy. Your first port of call for liquidity is your own currency. You and I, Honorable Chairman, know the state of affairs in respect of our own currency. So it is not an option at this stage. Therefore, that solution or a contributory solution to liquidity does not exist as an option. The next source of liquidity are exports, particularly in a dollarized environment. Now, in an economy where your exporters are on their belly, there is very little by way of contribution to the liquidity challenge. In other words, that blood we need to survive. So, export, special economic zones, we believe that when we are operational, we will drive exports to such levels of performance that they will contribute to the liquidity solution of the country. This third source of liquidity in any dollarized economy, or any economy for that matter, is to limit the amount of imports that a country gets. Now, in this case, our propensity as a country is for imports, the proclivity of this nation for imports is a well-known one. Even water, we import. Hence, we are having to make sure that in SEZs, we will encourage import substitution. And through that, we will limit the amount of foreign currency that is spent importing some of these things. When we save, we add to the exports. The fourth or fifth source of liquidity in any economy is FDI. We all know the situation in respect of the standing of our country in terms of attracting FDI. And to the extent that you have placed a responsibility on us to mobilize foreign exchange and attract FDI, we consider ourselves primary contributors to the solution of liquidity challenge. And as of now, that source of liquidity is in the intensive care. Therefore, we cannot expect liquidity challenges to improve because of that. The sixth is also multilateral sources of finance. We know our situation in respect of the debt situation, and therefore it's not an option at this stage. Donor money is another, it's not an option at this stage. Diaspora funds are a source of liquidity to any economy. Now, the SEZs are going to contribute to the attraction of monies from the diaspora, because we will have created factories and opportunities that actually are attractive to them. And by bringing in money, they will be contributing towards the liquidity or cash crisis. And of course, last but not least, there is something called confidence liquidity. Confidence liquidity, Mr. Chairman, is that liquidity that a nation decides to put back into the banks as opposed to carrying it in their pockets as a result of the confidence. I believe the country is regaining the confidence of the international community, and as such, through the SEZs, which have been used quite successfully the world over, we are going to contribute towards this stage. We are a flying object. We are not yet sure whether we belong to the Ministry of Finance because they took over the macroeconomic activities, or we belong to industry and commerce, or elsewhere. So until that is clarified, the situation will remain what it is. Yes, it will happen if decisions are made expeditiously. There are certain decisions that are beyond the boards, but we are confident that once it's determined, Yes, we are 8 months down the road, and that means 8 from 36. We will do our best. But you will be pleased to know that even though there is no secretariat and so forth, we continue to receive applications. And in one instance, we could not resist taking the bull by the horns and doing all what is administratively necessary to make sure that we approve the investment. And that one investment in itself was in excess of $1.2 billion. And it is going to change the face of this country, and that is the ZISCO, the ZISCO rehabilitation and investment. Now, that creates a new economic frontier in the Midlands and the country. Rhodesia used to be RISCO. Upon independence, a great deal of exports came from ZISCO until we know what happened. And we believe that the resuscitation of ZISCO and making Kwekwe and Redcliffe an iron and steel corridor in terms of special economic zones at $1.2 billion as an investment is to be subtracted from the 10 billion that we promised. And right now we've got piles and piles of investment applications. So we have no doubt that if things are done and we have the correct support, it will be done. The question that was not answered relates to offices. At this stage, we use the former Ministry of Macroeconomic Planning and Investment Promotion boardroom when we have got board meetings. But for day-to-day receipt of applications, meeting investors, and so forth, the ministries refer them to the chairman's personal office, which is at number in Central Avenue. So we operate from my office. We do not believe that the issues I've raised are problems. They are just challenges to be overcome. And I believe these are the necessary pains of a transition. Very soon, the authorities will be able to be very clear and advise us where we belong. We have written to the authorities, we have written variously to wherever we think we belong, asking them to confirm whether we are their child or not. And we await, I'm sure, round-robin consultations amongst them. But I want to assure you that the board has done all that's necessary to establish where we stand and where we belong. The Act is not specific as to which particular portfolio we belong. It simply says we report to the minister. In your wisdom, you left it that way, and we will wait for that. Suffice to also point out that His Excellency the President, Comrade Mnangagwa, is very, very clear about the role and importance of special economic zones. I say this against a background where, in his inaugural speech, page 4 of his speech, the last 2 paragraphs, he mentions the acceleration by his government of special economic zones as an economic tool. In the State of the Nation address, he also mentioned the special economic zones. And in his pre-Davos and at Davos, he went to town about special economic zones. Over and above that, he himself, is not talking from theory. He has visited several special economic zones the world over. So I don't believe there is any doubt in his mind about the potency of the special economic zones. There are systems that inform His Excellency the President, and those systems are well informed about our situation. Well, the disconnect between vision and implementation has been a characteristic of Zimbabwe generally, that excellent and brilliant visions are given to the nation, but like they say in strategy, the devil is in the details of implementation, and it is there where we are going to succeed, prosper his vision, or fail. At this stage, I would say that these are transitional issues, and we have not yet raised sufficient screams other than gently reminding those who are supposed to tell us to actually take the matter up. With respect to the ZISCO issue, or rather the declaration of special economic zones, or the criteria, okay. The law, as you gave it to us, requires the board, the authority, to gazette an area whose geographical extent is known, and make it a public, public knowledge. We have all the coordinates and know the extent of the land that's required in as far as the ZISCO application is concerned. But it is our wish to create corridors of excellence in the economic sphere, based on either markets, proximity to markets, or proximity to raw materials, or some such other distinction as will give the operators a comparative advantage. Now, Kwekwe, Redcliffe, that belt is known to be the home for ZISCO, and therefore we have not had difficulties in actually approving the project, subject to our gazetting those demarcations, and those gazetting will be subject to having a CEO and a secretariat, who are then going to go into the nitty-gritties of what should be done. Because we cannot, as a board, for the sake of good governance and separation of responsibilities, do everything from A to Z. If we do that, we would be trembling on good corporate governance, and we are not going to do that. So in determining what constitutes a special economic zone, we have come up with a criteria. The candidate location ought to have water, certain minimum basics. Water is one such basic. The application must speak to the availability of water 24/7, so that we don't invite companies that would like to do, say Pepsi, wanting to do beverages, and then find that they only get water once a week. It doesn't work. Number two, power. There is no debate to the fact that any area that we designate ought to have, or if it doesn't have at the moment, ought to have credible plans for having power, whether it's the traditional power or renewable or whatever. That needs to be spoken into the plans. The third is obviously roads, rail, in other words, communication and transport facilities. They could either be in existence or they ought to be spoken to in terms of their near availability. Because there is no point in approving a project where there will be no routes for raw materials or end products. Then we also look to the availability of labor around those areas. Our preference is that special economic zones must tap into the, particularly for the general labor, must tap into the labor of the surroundings, so to speak. So we also emphasize on comparative advantages. In other words, we cannot have a situation where someone comes and applies for a diamond cutting and polishing entity to be located in Hwange, and another one comes to apply for a coal processing in Mutare. We will persuade them to go to where raw materials are.
To all you Twitter heads, connect with ZFM Stereo on twitter.com/ZFM Stereo. /ZFM Stereo. Is ZFM Stereo Talk.
Can we begin by looking at Zimbabwe's debt clearance plan?
We have since cleared our arrears to the IMF, and right now, clearance of arrears to the African Development Bank and the World Bank is underway. It's work in progress. And I'm confident that we should be able to reach an understanding this year.
The talk that gets you talking. Mondays to Thursdays between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m.
The platform. Step up and speak up.
Yes, that was the first part of a presentation before the committee in Parliament by the Special Economic Zones Board Chairperson, Dr. Gideon Gono. My name is Kwirirayi on this special edition of the platform. As usual, we're supposed to have asked the MP today, but unfortunately, because of circumstances beyond our control, we were not able to do that. But from the responses we're getting on our social media platforms as well as WhatsApp, this is an important show that we've put together for you. Now, just to read some of the messages here, don't worry, we've got a second part of that presentation coming up in just a bit, but just to read some of your messages here. First of all, somebody said, why should we believe you when our hard-earned cash, 15 months of it disappeared during your reign at the Reserve Bank? That's talking about Dr. Gono. Says, failure is not an option, was your slogan, but it's largely because of your failed experiments, we find our beloved country with millions living with misery. And then I've got here Robin who says this is in reference to a statement in which someone Dr. Gono said he had to work from home. I've got two messages in here. It says, government does not operate from home. Please stop this immediately and be serious. You want to bring international investors to your house. And someone else, Hubert comes out and says, if he's operating from his personal office, then it's not a government project. It's his personal, it's his special economic zones project. How can government create a department and fail to house it? And just reading another message here from Catherine Chuma in Alisdale, Nyamandlovu, who says, special economic zones, Mr. Gono must admit that as governor of the Reserve Bank, ignored the confidence liquidity by establishing security-less banks across the country, and now the board is strategically maneuvering towards convincing the president. Mr. Gono will always bring ideas and solutions to suit anyone in power. Gono is intelligent, but the problem is him trying to play parallel to anyone in power. He is contradicting himself as a lot in. So that's Catherine Chuma from Alistair and Inyamandlovu. Please keep your messages coming in. We're going to play the second part of his presentation. I will read your messages as after this second part of the presentation, in which you're talking about this important issue of special economic zones as presented by the board chairperson, Dr. Gideon Gono. Just to remind you what they are, the motivation for these special economic zones is to attract greater foreign direct investment inflows, create jobs, and increase exports from the host country. So, coming from you, do you think that this presentation is giving you the confidence necessary? Let's hear what he had to say in the rest of his presentation.
News, lifestyle, charts, live radio, station highlights, and much more. Get it all on zfmstereo.co.zw.
Yes, government made pronouncements about 3 areas they preferred to be the first candidates to become special economic zones, and that was Sunway City in Ruwa, Bulawayo, and Vic Falls. When we came into office, we interrogated the rationale of that thinking and sought to advise in a manner and in a way that we hold very strongly about. In our view, and that's the approach we would want to take, the entire 391 square kilometers that make up Zimbabwe are candidates for special economic zones. The reason being that we cannot justifiably and logically restrict ourselves to those 3 designated areas. For instance, if Tokwem Kosi is ready with its master plan, it's ready with investors who want to do something there, it would be illogical for us to turn them away and say no, because you are not located in Bulawayo or Sunway City or Vic Falls, and therefore we will not give you a license for special economic zones. It would be illogical if somebody of a mining concern came up and wants to invest, taking advantage of the incentives that come with special economic zones, and we say no. Make sure your gold or your platinum is located in Sunway City. That's the only way you can access those privileges. No. Therefore, we are saying as a board, let opportunities be the ones that determine where we will declare a special economic zone. That way also, we are then being very inclusive in our approach to the economic development of the country. That way too, we are spreading the characteristics I mentioned earlier. If we say go to Sunway City, they may find that it will take 3 years, 4 years, 5 years to get water. We would be comfortable to answer questions that relate to how we are thinking, and the intentions were good, but we are saying let's broaden that to not just restrict it to that. Even when it comes to Bulawayo itself, it is not enough to declare and say Bulawayo is a special economic zone. Practically, it's not possible, because once an area has been declared a special economic zone, the Act requires us to fence it. We cannot fence the whole of Bulawayo without stating exactly where the boundaries are and so forth. And mind you, once we have declared a place a special economic zone, it ceases to become part of the customs union, customs area. It becomes an offshore inshore whose rules of play and administration are outside those of the of the country. So why we were going around interacting with the various authorities was to just make sure that people are aware of what we mean when we say we want Vic Falls to be a special economic zone. It then means that Gono and his board are now going to be administering Vic Falls. Are we prepared for that? Are members of parliament prepared for that? Is that the intention? Are we aware that that's what it means? That we will take off Vic Falls, we will take off Bulawayo as a whole from your administration. It sometimes shocks the system when we indicate like that. And therefore, how do we go about it? In Bulawayo, as he will speak more authoritatively, we want, even in Harare and anywhere, we want to create corridors of excellence. We can decide to say a Belmont area, right? We designate it as a leather and textile corridor, so that we know that all operations that are taking place there are to the best of international standards, and that we can actually say from point A to point B to point C to point D. This area, we have fenced it as required by the Act. We have established a customs desk that allows staff to come in and out without duty, without taxes, and allows it to go for exports. Allows disputes to be settled within a very short space of time without necessarily taking more than 10 days to and that sort of thing. Therefore, we are saying, if Mutoko was to come and say, out of these 10 hectares, we want to do a world-class tomato processing plant, and they have got exports, destinations, and we are near places of raw materials, and we are going to employ people around, we will be very happy to give them a special economic zone status. The same will happen to every province and every other location. We can even designate Mikro's Hotel and say it's a special economic zone inside Harare. But it will now be a zone, an entity outside Zimbabwe in terms of laws that apply to it and regulations, and who is the authority to be able to go in there. And you can't just now, once you have designated, it's now insulated. It can't be anybody else who just goes in there and say, let me see what you are doing. And so, no, it can only be the authority. Yeah. So that debate has not yet gone far and deeper in the population, particularly with the generality of those that run the country. Okay. So that's why we say every inch of Zimbabwe is our playground, and it's so that we introduce this animal in a staggered and in an easier way than to wake up tomorrow and we say, Honorable Mr. Irambi, you no longer can really just go in and out of Bulawayo. But that is what it means. In terms of the ease of doing business, Section 35 of the Act, you demanded that in the Act, that number one, we be the one-stop shop for giving licenses, permits, and every other facilitation required for the takeoff of the business and operation. A one-stop authority. You also required that from the date of application to the date of approval, it should not be more than 5 days. Now, if it is going to be up to 5 days from the date of accepting your application. It means that the systems and procedures, internal systems and procedures and corporate governance measures are well oiled enough to have done a due diligence on the applicant, to have visited the physical location where it is proposed, and to have interrogated and really taken a view. Now, if you don't have a secretariat to do that, how do you do it? Yes, I can confirm that with respect to ZISCO, we did that. We spent 2 days as members of the board interrogating, in finding out more about the investor. They came with their accountants. They came with their lawyers, lockups. And after that, we then helped them to shape the application and say, right, now you can submit to the board. Now, that is the work of management. We would have wanted to visit ZISCO and see the demarcations, but we don't have the resources to do so. When we visit clients right now, we use private cars. We use either my car or his and so forth. We are fortunate in that on the board, we have various members from different ministries. And by the way, Chairman, honorable members, I committed a grievous error of not noting or reporting to you apologies from members of the board who could not make it. Section 5 of the Act, you demanded that the number of board members not be more than 11, and that as much as possible they be equal between men and women, as much as possible. We are 11, and we have 3 ladies, 3 very competent ladies. I think underscoring the fact that for every lady she carries 2 men. Right? But my job is to answer the question as it is. That's the way we are. You also touched on whether in our duties, in terms of gender specifics, in your wisdom, you saw it fit not to include any form of discrimination by whatever means in the promotion or advancement of economic activity in SEZs. So we have not sought to think along any other discriminating way, whether it be it gender, whether it be it anything else. We are gender neutral, so to speak, in our investment considerations. But we could play. We are aware. We were all born of a woman, and we would want to see our sisters, mothers, and significant others coming into the mainstream of economic activity, particularly taking advantage of the SEZs. And so we would play more of a persuasive role than being prescriptive or legislative about it. We know what has happened when we try to legislate the indigenization aspects in our law. I shall not go to that, but just suffice to say that advice we had given you in 2007 is then governor was to say, let's not do it that way. But that's a different matter for another day. So we are gender neutral. We propose, however, to encourage our women to read and see the opportunities that come with the special economic zones. And we will establish linkages with the special economic zones so as to facilitate exports or supply side interventions of procurements and other supply into the special economic zones, and also to come up with projects. Particularly, we would encourage, through you, Chairman, Honorable, to really bring a project to do sanitary ware, which I believe, so far to my knowledge, these are projects being done by men. So it's really open. Regarding the investment in Zisco, a chain is as strong as its weakest link. There are those who will want to invest, but if they meet roadblocks in the form of blockages, they will not be able to do that. To the extent that other agencies of business and government had brought this project without our involvement, we would not be talking about it. So we played our very, very 2 cents worth of effort, facilitation, to encourage. And that is what it should be. It is not the duty of the board to think of projects to implement. It is the duty of business persons to come up with the projects. And all we do is to validate and facilitate. So if at all, through my speech, I appeared like taking greater credit, I think it was an unnecessary exuberance on my part. In the wisdom of the legislature, who actually came up with the ZIA Act, and at the same time saw it fit to come up with the Special Economic Zones Act, we are not qualified as a board to question the dual existence of ourselves. We cannot ask. It's like in a household, you ask your sibling why you were born, or some such. No, that would be, I think, big-headedness on our part. But yes, there is room to actually merge the two in order to save on, instead of 2 boards, there could be 1 board. Instead of looking for new accommodation, there could be accommodation that exists already. Instead of coming up, scratching our heads, coming up with systems and procedures of handling applications, we could adapt what is there together and merge. Instead of waiting for a secretariat, there could be that. So all we can do is to proffer suggestions, but we can never question the necessity of the birth of another child. By the way, there is, however, a subtle difference. Special economic zones are geographically demarcated areas of specialized economic activity. The difference being that if ZIA was to approve a project today, they have no powers to now say, you are now an offshore, inshore. Whereas we can, through the powers vested in us, now say, okay, this is now a little Singapore in Zimbabwe. As a result, Honorable, you are no longer allowed to go in there and interfere. And in your wisdom, prior to now, you actually then said the provisions of the Indigenization and Empowerment Act do not apply. You also went further and said anything in terms of security of tenure. You also put in the act the fact that all investments in the special economic zones are secure, and anything that is done which is inconsistent with Section 71 of the Constitution of this country is null and void. You also went further and indicated that the labor laws of this country in the SEZs are to be agreed between the minister responsible for labor and the authority. In other words, we would agree. And one of the things we would look at is the fairness of labor to the investor and the fairness of the investor to labor, and avoid disruptive actions of any nature.
To all you Twitter heads, connect with ZFM Stereo on twitter.com/ZFM Stereo. /ZFM Stereo.
The platform. Step up and speak up.
Yes, that was the presentation of the board chairperson for the Special Economic Zones, Dr. Gideon Gono. And as far as that, the issues surrounding that particular project is concerned, a government project, of course, and as far that is targeted at creating, attracting greater foreign direct investment inflows, creating jobs, and increasing exports from the host country being, of course, Zimbabwe. I'm going to read some of your messages here, some very good messages that we got here throughout the program. Rova, who is in Bulawayo, says, why should we trust just looking at this, just trying to read this. Why should we trust Dr. Gono in as far as this is concerned? And I've got to read another message here from Chris Doda, who says, from the first presentation by Dr. Gono, I will say he is spot on what needs to be done to attract investment under SEZ. The government should capacitate the board, and Parliament should craft the relevant legislation that speak to investor confidence with the necessary statutes that answers to international laws. The wisdom in establishing the SEZ should be prioritized by government. I've got this final message I'm going to read here. Say, let's give Gono a chance. Stop throwing brickbats before seeing results. This job is not for the faint-hearted. The government should quickly operationalize the SEZ Secretariat and other attendant laws to speak up this very noble plan. Zimbabwe can and will rise again. So yeah, that's it for the platform for this week. Of course, next week Ask the MP will be back. We'd like to apologize once again for not being able to bring that particular program as we do every Tuesday. It was due to circumstances beyond our control. I'm going to take a quick break right now. When I come back right after the break, it's Health Matters, and we're getting an update, of course, on the issues around cholera, the cholera outbreak that happened last month, and the ongoing efforts that are taking place. And as far as that is concerned, for now, we're going to take a quick break. But to listen to the program, the platform, of course, that was presented today, make sure that you go onto our YouTube page. We've been putting our podcasts up on our YouTube page, and you can our YouTube account, and that's also including programs from last week and the week before. We've been putting up the programs there. If you missed any of the programs on the platform, they are available via our YouTube page. Just look for ZFM Stereo on YouTube. But we're going to take a quick break, and we come back, of course, is Health Matters, and we'll be talking about cholera.
It's ZFM